Ken, how are you?
Good. How you guys doing?
Doing good.
Ken. All right, Ken. Well, I think the one of the bigger things that came out in the news today was that the fight with Ian Freeman was pulled. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, the promoter was agreed to one amount. The promoter then came back to you and said it's not going to be this amount; it's going to be less. But had already been using your likeness to promote that event. Can you give us your take on that?
Yeah, they'd actually contacted me about, because when I was down there with another organization doing some commentating down there, it was Bama, and I made mention because I guess Ian Freeman was looking to come out and fight, and they asked me what I thought about it, and I said, "Oh, it would be a great fight. I think if that's the fight they do, I think it would be great. One legend against another legend." And then all of a sudden it blew up. I got this call. All of a sudden they want to put the fight together. And I said, okay, well, whoever comes to me and wants to put the money up and get the fight done, that's the person I'll fight for. And so they came up with the money. I had my attorney take over from there. We negotiated a price that everybody agreed on. I mean, everybody was happy with it. Fact is, my attorney was a little bit uncomfortable with the fact that they agreed to everything so quickly. And so I said, yeah, but that's because we weren't really trying to, rip them off or take money. So where they couldn't make money, we made a fair thing. There was no TV, no pay-per-view, so we made a fair deal with them so they can make money and we can make a little bit of money. But the most of all, I wanted to get back in the ring. And I thought Ian would be a great fight for me to get back in the ring with. So we agreed to it. We negotiated. Everybody was fine with it. 30 days later, 6 weeks later, all of a sudden, the payment's supposed to be in, and there's no payment. And so my attorney tries to get a hold of them. They're not answering. Finally, he threatens them with the act of, you guys are not getting back to us. We're assuming that you're not going to pay. So they got back, and they hem-hawed around, and it just felt to me like they were stalling. It felt to me like they were stalling. They really weren't answering the questions. Then it got push came to shove, and my attorney basically just told them, the deal here is you guys are in breach. June 1st, you were supposed to have money in escrow. Escrow was totally put into account because I couldn't touch the money and they couldn't touch the money until after the fight, so that way everybody was protected. And that's what we agreed upon. I thought that was fair for both parties, so I couldn't get a hold of the money, neither could they, until after the fight, until after the performance was done. Well, still no money. And so we tried 3 times to get them to address the breach issue. And every single time they would skirt around that issue and ask basically that they weren't going to pay this amount of money. I need a gross pair of balls and I should just fight and stop pussyfooting around. You're a thief. You're a crook. You accept money and then you run. And just all these things that never had anything to do with the idea that they breached the contract. They tested my emotions. They tested my mankind. Just everything but the idea that they breached the contract and they still have not put money where it needs to be.
Ken, if I'm not mistaken, they don't have athletic commissions like we have over here in the United States. Is that right?
That's the reason why we did the escrow. It's because I felt like if I got to England and I depended on them to pay me, I was taking a huge risk because there's no laws down there that would govern them to pay me. So we did the escrow thing so that way they felt comfortable knowing that it's in an escrow account. It can't be touched until after the fight. That way I was protected and they were protected. We did that because there's no commission or anything to bind these contracts.
Okay. That's one of the things that came out in the news today, Ken, and I appreciate you touching on that. The rest of the interview is a little more things that I really wanted to ask. I've been a huge fan of yours for, I think I'm coming up on decades, Ken. You mentioned you want to get back in the ring. Now, you fought in the UFC cage, but you've also fought in the Pride ring. Do you have a preference as to fighting in a ring or a cage?
If I had my choice, it would be in a cage. Just because I know there's no stalling in the fight. If you happen to hit up into the ropes, you got to stop because arms get trapped. trapped, heads get trapped, and in the fence, you get trapped. That's your own fault.
Ken, Bob Merowitz, one of the guys who was involved in the early UFCs, tried doing he tried the Yama pit fighting where they had the bowl-shaped surface. Now, if there's an expert in mixed martial arts, Ken, it's you. How did you feel about that bowl-shaped surface?
And Bob Meyerowitz, that's the background he comes from. And I think with Mills, the one that actually designed the cage when we first started the UFC, that was really theatrical. It really stood out. But I think that now we're all so accustomed to a ring or a cage, and anything other than that is going to be very tough to sell to an audience now. I know what Bob Meyer was trying to do. He's trying to change the game. He's trying to give it a new look. But we're too far along with what MMA is today now, and people are accustomed to, that I think going too far out of the realm on something like that is, you'd almost have to change what's inside the ring.
Ken, back in the day, if Mike Tyson had agreed to go into the octagon, would you have fought Mike Tyson, and how would that fight have gone?
Yeah, I think it would have gone the same thing as James Toney and Randy Couture. I think it was unfair for James Toney to have to fight Randy Couture, his first fight in the cage with no experience. I would have given it to somebody like Chuck Liddell or somebody who was predominantly a striker, because we're not trying to prove one style is better than another style. We're not trying to piss other people off by saying we're the best. The idea is for everybody to enjoy fighting and different types of fighting. I thought UFC missed a huge opportunity with James Toney to not go in and just destroy this man with a strict grappler. By going in and allowing this man to at least have an opportunity to have some success. It's like throwing Randy Couture in there with James Toney in a strictly a boxing match. It would have ended the same way, very, very badly for Randy. Now, that being said, Mike Tyson, I think if Mike Tyson would have had some sort of training to defend a takedown, Mike Tyson was built for this sport. Mike Tyson has the attitude and the determination and the anger to do a sport like this. I would have loved to have been able to see him get a little bit of training and get in the ring and do something like this, especially with his power, as quick as he was with his movements. Absolutely. But again, he could have been very easily ruined, just like James Toney, by throwing him in with a dominant grappler. I mean, he doesn't do anything else but shoot and take you down.
Ken, in addition to being the mixed martial arts legend that you are, you're also a very storied coach and teacher. If Mike Tyson had shown up to the Lion's Den, do you think Ken Shamrock, the coach and teacher, could have made him into what you think he had the potential to be?
Depending on how far along he was in his career. If it was something he just, like boxing, he's just starting out and he got a hunger for MMA, absolutely, he could have owned the world in MMA, I believe. But if he was a little bit farther along and already had, past the Customatos, pre-Customato and after Customato, if I had him pre-Customato, he would have been an animal, a destroyer. After Customato passed away, it'd be tough to keep his attention directed in one area.
Ken, when you came back to MMA after being involved in professional wrestling, before professional wrestling, you were considered a heavyweight, but that was before weight classes really existed. You come back into MMA, now we have the unified rules. What made you decide to go to light heavyweight as opposed to fighting at 220?
Well, I think at that point in time, you had Chuck Liddell, you had Randy Couture, you had Tito Ortiz. The fights were at 205. There was really, at heavyweight, there was really nobody there for me to really go in and actually fight. You had Tim Sylvia, you had Rico Rodriguez. It was just that era where there wasn't really anybody all that impressive. Where the money was being made was in that light heavyweight class. And that's the reason why I chose to do that class, was because I thought the opportunity there, especially with Tito Ortiz being there, with the feud that we had, that I could have really jacked up the numbers and gotten the UFC going to where it is today. And I was right. I did.
Ken, we know identify your style in the 90s as shoot fighting. Did you call it shoot fighting back then?
Yes, I did. It was a term we used because over in Pancrase, it was seat fighting, fist fighting, and ground technique put together. And we, here in the States, need to call it something we could understand. So it was basically shoot fighting because shooting was the wrestling term and grappling term, and the fighting was actually the feet and the fist.
Given your shoot fighting background coming from Japan, had you ever considered competing in like sambo tournaments or judo or any of the grappling art, considering that a lot of the guys who knew traditional jiu-jitsu didn't know how to handle your style?
I know, and the reason being is because I started out a purist MMA. My style was developed. Ken Shamrock, Lionsden style was developed from the early days of MMA to today. So, and it's a purist MMA style. I don't know how. I mean, obviously, I know I'm a great grappler, and if you look at my record, I don't think I've been submitted but one time in the UFC, and that was my very first outing. After that, I was never submitted. So my ground game has always been, top notch. But to take away the punching and the MMA part of it, almost would be like you take a piece of me away. So I've never really had the luck to just go in and cut one part of my heart out.
Ken, when you were involved in the IFL, the International Fight League, your team, the Nevada Lions, really produced some big players. I'm talking about John Gons Gunderson, and then, of course, the heavyweight prospect, Big Country Roy Nelson. In your opinion,
don't forget Pat Healy. Don't forget about Pat Healy.
That's right. Pat Healy was also a big player as well. Considering what you did in the IFL, what went wrong with the IFL, and how could it have been changed?
Well, I personally, my opinion, and it's just a one man's opinion, is I don't think it was ever built to succeed. I think it was built to make money, quick money, and get out. As soon as it hit the stock market, they sold shares, and they gave shares away to the fighters and competitors. So they felt like they owned a part of the organization. They felt like they were going to be rich. Well, you couldn't sell them for a year or 2 years, however the stipulations were put on them. But then after about a year, after the first season, second season starts up, and the stocks are at its highest. And all of a sudden, you start seeing the stocks go down. Well, from everything that I could tell, the owners, the people that had owned the major shares, had sold their stock off and made millions and millions of dollars on an organization that I think was never built to succeed. Was built to make quick money through the stock market.
Now, Ken, we all know that not only have you fought in MMA, you were also in pro wrestling for a while. Just curious, what did you feel was more of a challenge, being in the world of pro wrestling or the world of mixed martial arts?
Oh, boy, that's apples and oranges. Yeah, it's tough because I tell you, there's a lot of great moments and a lot of great matches in both organizations. And I couldn't really tell you, I would have to, I don't know. I don't know. I really had a really great run in both sports, and I really enjoyed both sports. So I couldn't really put a finger on which one that I would love to do. I know even today, I would still want to do both of them. I couldn't tell you which one I would want to do first.
That would lead into my next question. Who would you rather work for, Dana White or Vince McMahon? Which guy do you think you'd get along with better?
Vince McMahon, there's no question. Even though me and Vince have our issues, and I don't even know what they are, I'd like to know, but for some reason I've been trying to get back into the WWE, and rumors been that they're not interested, which doesn't make any sense to me, other than I made somebody mad or somebody doesn't like me and want me there, which could be, Triple H, because I don't think we really, that I know of. I'm not sure, but rumor has it that, he might be one of the guys that doesn't want me back. I know Vince has his issues with me also, but nothing more than anybody else hasn't done there and has had a chance to go back and do something there. So Even with that being said, I would much rather work with Vince than I would Dana, because at least I know Dana would. At least I know for a fact that Vince would lie to me. He may not tell me something, or he may set things up, or work things out, or however, and not include me in a conversation. But I don't. In my opinion, I don't think he would lie to me straight in the face like Dana White did to me several times.
Ken, speaking of wrestling and MMA, when I first saw your fights in Pancrase, I was absolutely blown away by the hybrid wrestling concept. There was also the UWF over in Japan. Did you ever consider switching over to the UWF as opposed to Pancrase, or was Pancrase always really where you needed to be?
No, Pancrase was where I wanted to be, because we put that together, and I went with Funaki and Suzuki. When Pancrase started, they wanted me to be their guy to come over and actually recruit for the U.S. and be their guy. But at the same time, I knew they were going to go to a hard style. And so that's what I wanted. I wanted more competitiveness in these organizations. And so when they said that they were going to be much more harder style, that sold me, and I went with them. And that's the reason why I was able to do so successfully in the UFC, was because when I made that move, I was able to really improve my submission game and my striking, everything I needed to be a full MMA competitor.
Ken, we talked about James Toney and how you didn't think it was fair throwing him into the cage against Randy Couture. Now, I don't know if I've told you this or not, but I'm a huge fan of Ken Shamrock. And a couple years ago, you were getting ready to fight Kimbo Slice, and probably one of the most tragic injuries that could happen pre-fight happened. If that fight had been greenlit and you could have fought Kimbo Slice, would you have saw where the fight gone, or would you have tried to exploit Kimbo's vulnerability to the ground game?
Well, I knew Kimbo was like a baby on his back. I already knew that. And so I couldn't understand how an organization could put so much on a guy who couldn't fight on the ground. Not just not fight on the ground, but I mean, he couldn't stand up on his own. Even if there was nobody there to keep him from standing up, he would have a hard time getting back to his feet. I couldn't understand that. And so I knew he was really weak on the ground. So my thing was I was going to wear his ass, literally wear his ass out. I wasn't going to try and submit him. I wasn't going to do anything to him other than slap him, push his head in the mat, smash his face in the mat, literally humiliate this guy and show him and show the organization you cannot embarrass MMA by putting a guy in there who has no ability whatsoever. He doesn't even you couldn't even say the word submission. He doesn't belong in there representing MMA like that and making all that money when there's so many other people out there that should have been in his spot. And they were paying this guy a stupid amount of money, and he wasn't worth the powder to blow him up.
Ken, right after the fight, a lot of people came forward and said, "Oh, I would have jumped in." Seth Petrozelli eventually was awarded the fight, but I believe one of the names that said he would have fought would have been your brother Frank. Do you think that fight would have went Frank's direction?
Oh, absolutely. Frank would have handled him like, butter, hot knife going through butter. I mean, Frank is a decent stand-up guy. He's got good kicks. He moves well. I think Kimbo would have been chasing him around and getting tagged, and then eventually it would have went to the ground because Kimbo can't stop anybody from taking him down. My brother is the worst shooter in the world, and he could have taken Kimbo down. And once it got to the ground, game over. But just the conditioning in itself, all Frank would have had to do was just leg kick him, jump around on him a little bit. Kimbo would have got tired after 2 or 3 minutes, and then Frank would have had his way with him.
Now, Ken, switching gears, you've been in movies and on TV. If Hollywood was to do the Ken Shamrock story, if they made a Ken Shamrock movie, what would you want the story to say, and who would you pick to play you?
Well, first of all, the story I would want is to show more of my struggles and the things that I had went through to get to where I was at today. Because the one thing I want kids to know that come from where I come from, which is a group home background, basically no parents raising you, in and out of juvenile hall, in trouble with the law, want them to know that because you go through these things, don't mean that you don't have a shot at life. If you choose to put your nose to the grindstone, you choose to do something and you focus on that something and you don't let anything get in your way from getting it done, then you can really do anything you want. It's not an excuse to say I didn't have the opportunities that other people had, because you may not have those opportunities just as I didn't. But when you get old enough, you can create those opportunities. You work hard enough and you get them done. And with that being said, I know it's not that easy, because people's minds get changed. People get into a pattern of doing things because of the way they were brought up. It's hard sometimes to break those patterns. So I know what I'm saying, and it doesn't always work like that because our minds are so easily manipulated and changed growing up certain ways. So it's not that easy, but at the same time, you also too have to know that there is a possibility and there is a way. If you don't let them know that, then yeah, trying to manipulate and change their minds to something that they have no idea is even possible, yeah, it would be tough. But if I can get that story out and get them to see that, hey, I was the worst that could be out there. Juvenile hall at 10 years old. I went through group homes from the time I was 9 years old to the time I was 18 years old. In trouble with the law, strong arm robbery, stabbed. I did all those things. And yet I am here today because I have chosen not to be just another statistic. I chose to be somebody. And it's possible. But people have to be able to see these stories in order for them to be able to have this light go off in their head and say, I could do that.
Ken, we got about 3 more questions for you. You're one of the bigger names from the first UFC that are still competing.
Whoa. I didn't get to pick who I wanted to play me.
Oh, go. Oh, I'm sorry, Ken. Go ahead.
Yeah, don't be jumping on my question. The guy's got to answer.
That's right, man. I think Mark Wahlberg.
Excellent choice.
Outstanding. Okay. Now my next question, Ken. Being that you are one of the living legends that are still competing today, when gloves were introduced to MMA, the fingerless grappling gloves, how did you feel like your style was going to change in response to the surface of your hands changing, your striking ability?
I didn't like it. In fact, I didn't even like the rounds. I like the idea, but again, I did understand why they changed, though. But I didn't like it because it does eliminate a lot of submissions. It gives people a hold to grab onto, to be able to stop your hands from moving. I've several times going for leg locks, guys just reach down and grab your gloves, and pretty much you're handcuffed. So it did take away a lot of the submissions, even with rear naked chokes, trying to slide them in and out on the chin. Working for arm bars. It's just so easy to stop a guy's hand, trap a guy's hand with those gloves on, that it really eliminated a lot of quick submissions.
Ken, have you ever been motivated to fight someone you've trained? And in that same vein, if you could fight any celebrity, who would you fight?
Well, I think it's been quite known for a long time that I wanted to fight my brother. Just because of some of the disrespect that he showed towards my father, who saved his life. So that's always been out there, and I think that we're hopefully get to a point to where we could resolve some of those issues. We'll see what happens. But he's got a lot of answering to do, and hopefully he'll be able to do that, because it sucks to go through life and not have explanations for why you would treat somebody so terribly that saved your life and gave you an opportunity at life. So hopefully those things will get resolved and we can move forward in life and hopefully, do some things out there for the fans. So we'll see what happens. I know we're meeting tonight not me and Frank. Tomorrow me and Frank will meet. But tonight we're going to be doing Ask Me Questions, and then tomorrow me and Frank get together and we're going to tell a story. And hopefully this story will come out and things will be worked out.
Talk about celebrating July 4th with fireworks, Ken. That is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Ken, Babalu Sobral recently retired. Rampage Jackson just signed a big deal for similar reasons that they didn't like working with Dana White. Have you considered approaching Bellator, or have you been approached by Bellator to really put use to what you were very, very good at?
Yeah, I have been approached, and I think the story that we're doing is going to be Bellator is the one behind it. So I don't know what the impact that's going to be, but I know the Ken Shamrock, Frank Shamrock, and Bob Shamrock story is going to be surfaced around the Bellator parts of it.
Ken, in closing, what's next for the world's most dangerous man? Where do you want to take your life and career going forward, and how would you want fans to support that?
Well, first of all, I've got a reality show that's going to be, we're actually shooting a pilot on the 25th, 26th, 27th of July, and I've got a bail bonds and a security company where we bring people in to train to become security or bodyguards, whether it's international or whether it's just babysitting rich people. We're going to be doing a really reality series on that. We're shooting a pilot in July on the 24th, 25th, 26th, I believe. And, of course, then this story with Frank, I don't know when that's coming out, but I know that we're in the process of shooting that. And also, too, I've got my documentary coming out probably at the end of the summer, which is going to be the trials and tribulations that I went through my career. Talks about the troubles and the struggles that I've had and the successes that I've had and the reasons why I've had those successes. And that's already been shot in the can, so that should be coming out at the end of summer. So there's a lot happening with Ken Shamrock. We're just waiting for one of them to come out, the other two that we're getting ready to shoot. So within the next year, there's going to be a lot of exposure of who Ken Shamrock is, was, and will be. But I would have to say this, the one thing that I'm working for, that all this stuff that I'm doing is geared towards, is that I was passed on from my father, who adopted me when I was in a group home. I had no direction and nowhere to go. I was at the end of the road, and one foot in CYA and 1 foot out, which is California Youth Authority, which is a prison for kids. If I failed this home, I was going to prison. And so I was at my last step. And he showed me ways to generate my anger and my depressions and all the bad things that happened. He showed me how to direct that into something positive, and that was sports. But other kids had the similar problems, but they didn't do sports. They were singers, or they were rappers, or they were actors, or musicians. But he was able to show these kids different ways to direct this hurt and this anger they had in life into something positive. Well, everything that I do from this point on, and this is where I want the fans' support when the time comes, is that I want to build a home. It's a $1 million plus home for boys and girls, 2 different homes, to where I could take in children, troubled youth, who are at that last step, who don't have a direction in life, who are angry and frustrated because they keep failing over and over again. I want to show them a new way in life, that they can take all those things that happen to them, all that frustration, anger, and direct it into something positive. And I'm going to show them how to do that.
Ken, that is absolutely fantastic. On behalf of the entire Cage Nation, we want to say thank you very much for talking to us on the phone. I know this is a very, very big deal to me and Drew as well.
It's a huge deal.
Yeah, this is huge for us, Ken, and I appreciate the time to sit and talk to us. And happy 4th of July to you as well, Ken.
Well, thank you so much. And again, I want to apologize to my fans, to Ian Freeman's fans, and to the fans in England, and to the fans that were coming from the U.S. to England. I apologize. I'm sorry the fight didn't happen, but it was something that was out of my control, and that was completely in the organization's control to have this fight happen. They chose not to do the things they needed to do to make this fight happen. I know I'm going to take a lot of flack, I know they're going to talk a lot of trash about me and say it was my fault and that they did everything they needed to do to make this fight happen. But if you look at them and you look at me, which one wants to fight more?
It's clearly the world's most dangerous man, and
Obviously.
that's the story I'll be telling everyone who crosses my path. God help them if they try to argue with me.
Well, it's about money to them, and for me, it's a business. I'm not going to let somebody take advantage of me. I took this fight because I thought it was a great fight for me, and at the last minute, I'm going to say, well, I don't want it no more. Yeah, that's been my reputation.
Ken, best of luck to you.